Hi everybody, and thanks for watching my latest video series on the fundamentals of Italian diction. This video builds on the things I talked about in my earlier videos, so I encourage you to watch those before continuing here, because that's where I explain the concept of the International Phonetic Alphabet and introduce the 31 sounds in the Italian language that we're going to be working with here. In my last video, I introduced the letters of the Italian alphabet and their possible pronunciations, and in this series I'm going to talk about the spelling conventions that tell you when to use which pronunciation for a given letter. After watching this, you should have a little firmer grasp of what to do with those foreign words on your sheet music. Speaking of which, I should also mention that this series is intended for singers and singing students, although hopefully it'll be helpful to others as well. In this series, I'm going to focus generally on Italian spelling conventions, and I'll put up other videos that discuss spelling issues in Italian that warrant further considerations, as well as common pitfalls for English speakers learning to pronounce Italian words. Probably the most important thing to remember right now is that Italian has a completely different spelling system than English. Even though we're dealing with the same 26 letters that English has, the majority are not pronounced the way you as an English speaker would expect. The good news is that the system has its own logic, and within that logic, Italian words are very phonetically spelled. So once you start understanding the Italian spelling system, you'll pretty much be able to pronounce any word you see written. Out of the 26 letters of the alphabet, 12 are always or almost always pronounced like an English speaker would pronounce them. I'm highlighting those letters on the screen right now. I went over the pronunciations of these in the Italian alphabet video, so if you're not clear on them, you'll want to review that since I'm not going to add anything about them at this point. They're pretty simple, so if you watch the other video, you shouldn't have too much trouble with them. The first group I really want to talk about is the vowels. As I talked about in Sounds of the Italian Language and the Italian Alphabet, Italian has 7 vowel sounds and 5 vowel letters. 3 of these letters are always pronounced the same. A is always pronounced A, I is always pronounced E, and U is always pronounced U. O and E each have 2 possible pronunciations, one open pronunciation and one closed pronunciation. Most of the time, O and E are pronounced closed. O as in ponte, and E as in nero. If the O or the E is in a stressed syllable, it's sometimes pronounced open, O as in donna, and E as in senza. There are a couple of rules that you can use to figure out whether a stressed O or E is open or closed, but that topic is complex enough that I'd rather give it its own video later. For now, you should just consult a good dictionary with IPA to find out whether your O's and E's are open or closed. I want to stress that the difference between open and closed O's and E's is really important, even though it can be hard for English speakers to hear in many dialects. Sometimes the only difference between 2 words is whether the vowel is open or closed. For instance, vinti means 20, while venti means winds. Now, I want to touch up on diphthongs just very briefly. Italian is a very vowel-oriented language, and you'll often find multiple vowels, as many as 4 or 5, all in a row. In Italian, you want to be careful not to separate these with glottal stops. One vowel just flows into the next, as in il calzettaio ha un gatto, not il calzettaio ha un gatto. A lot of the time in Italian, when 2 vowels are next to each other, they each get their own syllable, especially in music, where a word like lei will often be given 2 notes. However, there are 2 particular cases where this is not true. In the Sounds of Italian video, I mentioned the 2 glides, y and w. If an I comes right before another vowel, it becomes the glide y, as in miei. The main situation where this is not true is if the I is part of a stressed syllable, as in mio, or farmacia. Similarly, if a U comes before another vowel, it becomes the glide w, as in uomo. Again, if the U is part of a stressed syllable, like in suo, different story. Also, in rare cases, you'll get a word like buio, where the I becomes the glide, buio. In any case, you can tell the details about how your word is pronounced by checking a good dictionary or your IPA transcription if you already have one. There are a number of Italian diphthongs or vowel combinations that are challenging for English speakers. In Italian, vowels are pure and clear whether alone or in combination with other vowels. English speakers tend to insert glides where they don't belong and to turn diphthongs into triphthongs because English has a lot more vowels and especially a lot more diphthongs than Italian does. This is going to make sense to you if you've watched the intro to the IPA, so if any of this vocabulary sounds unfamiliar, you'll probably want to watch that and brush up on the vocab before continuing. Anyway, I'm especially talking here about diphthongs that start with open or closed E's and O's, and sometimes A's as well. You'll want to be careful, for example, to pronounce aereo instead of aereo, beare instead of beiare, and boa instead of boa or boa. You can almost just keep the vowel the same and relax your lips to go from the O to the A. Two more difficult combinations are ae and eu. Make sure you're pronouncing trae instead of trai or trai. And the heroine of Gluck's most famous opera is Euridice, not Euridice. Obviously, these are subtle differences, but they're really important aspects of Italian pronunciation, and you can learn them with practice and patience. At this point, I'd like to turn your attention back to the 9 Italian consonants that aren't necessarily pronounced like you'd expect. The first one I'm going to take on is C. In Italian, how the letter C is pronounced depends on what comes after it. C is always pronounced k unless it is followed by an I or an E. If it's followed by an I or an E, it's pronounced ch. C is never ever pronounced s in Italian. Some example words would include calore, cedere, cima, conte, and cubo. C can also come before a consonant, as in crema. The ch sound can also come before an a, o, or u. This happens when there is an I between the C and the main vowel. In this case, the I is always going to be silent. Examples of this include ciao, ciò, ciondoloni, and ciuffo. The only time an I in this situation is not silent is if it is the primary stress of the word. An example of a stressed I between a C and another vowel is farmacia, where the I is pronounced because it has its own syllable. Farmacia. So at this point, to clarify, we have 2 possible pronunciations of C, which are k and ch, and 3 possible pronunciations of I, which are e, y, and silent. Just like a ch sound can come before an a, o, or a u, a hard k sound can come before an I or an e. The k sound is affected by adding an h after the C. This is completely counterintuitive for English speakers, but the combination ch in Italian is always pronounced k, never ch. Always. You can go to the bank with this. This gives you words like chimica, chioccia, and che. We're a little past 8 minutes here, so I'm going to actually stop right now and continue with the rest of the letters in section 2. See you in a minute.